During a surprise visit to my husband's office, I found him locked in a room with his assistant. Panicked, she whispered, "Did she see us?" He replied, "She won't leave me anyway." I knocked calmly and said, "You're right, I won't leave. But you'll regret staying." When he got home, his bags were packed and my lawyer was waiting. I never thought I'd be here writing this. I was one of those people who thought cheating happened to other women. Not to me. Not in my marriage. But here I am. And if my past self could see me now, she'd probably be laughing at how naive I used to be. My husband, Mike, and I had been married for 12 years. We had 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, a dog named Daisy, and a life that, on the surface, looked solid. I stayed home with the kids for most of our marriage, but once they were older, I started working part-time. Mike had a job in marketing, the kind that came with long hours, business trips, and late-night emails. He always had an excuse. He was working on a big campaign. He was stuck in a client meeting. He was grabbing drinks with the team. And like a fool, I believed him. It's not like I had any reason not to. He was a good dad. He paid the bills. We didn't fight much. The passion wasn't exactly there anymore, but that's marriage, right? At least, that's what I told myself. I wasn't suspicious when he started mentioning his assistant, Tara. She was young and ambitious. She was a lifesaver. She made his work easier. I should have known. I should have seen it. But I didn't. Until the day everything came crashing down. I had been bringing Mike lunch at work once or twice a month. It was a small thing, something to remind him that I cared. I wasn't clingy. I wasn't checking up on him. It was just a kind gesture. That day, I showed up around noon, like always. His office was in a sleek glass building downtown, the kind with high ceilings and fake plants everywhere. I walked past security, took the elevator up to the 23rd floor, and smiled at Diane, his secretary, as I stepped into the reception area. She looked off. "Oh," she said, blinking fast. "You're here." "Yeah," I said, holding up the takeout bag. Thought I'd surprise him. She hesitated. "He's in a meeting," she said. That wasn't unusual. I shrugged. "I can wait." She bit her lip. "Actually, he's in a private meeting." I frowned. "What does that mean?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. And in that moment, I knew. I knew. I walked past her before she could stop me, down the hallway to Mike's office. The door was locked. That was weird. I knocked. Silence. I knocked again. Still silence. I reached for the handle, testing it. Locked. And then, through the door, I heard it. A woman's voice. Whispering. "Did she see us?" My stomach dropped. Then, Mike's voice. Calm. Dismissive. "She won't leave me anyway." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the hallway. I should have screamed. Should have cried. Should have kicked the door down and made a scene. But I didn't. I just stood there, heartbeat pounding in my ears, staring at the door of the man I had spent over a decade building a life with. And then, somehow, my hand lifted. I knocked one last time. Firm. Controlled. And I said, just as calmly as he had, "You're right, Mike. I won't leave. But you'll regret staying." Silence. Then the sound of scrambling inside. A rustling of clothes. A chair scraping against the floor. I turned and walked out. I didn't wait to see their panicked faces. I didn't care. By the time Mike got home that night, his bags were packed, and my lawyer was sitting in our living room. Mike walked through the front door at exactly 7:12 p.m. I know because I was staring at the clock, waiting. Daisy, our golden retriever, padded over to greet him like nothing was wrong. For a second, he didn't notice the suitcases by the door. He was pulling off his coat, setting his keys down, like it was any other night. Like he hadn't just shredded the life we built with a few careless words. Then he saw them. The color drained from his face. "What the hell is this?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I let him stand there, soaking it in. The bags. The lawyer on the couch, flipping through papers. The silence. Finally, I spoke. "You're leaving." He let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. "Come on. Can we talk?" "Talk?" I repeated. "Like in your office today?" His jaw clenched. "It's not what you think." I smiled. A small, humorless thing. "Oh, it's not?" "Because what I think is that you locked yourself in your office with your assistant, and when I knocked, she panicked. And then you told her I wouldn't leave you. Like I was some kind of permanent furniture in your life. Something you didn't have to worry about." He exhaled sharply. "You're blowing this out of proportion." My lawyer, Chris, chuckled from the couch. "They always say that," he muttered. Mike shot him a glare. "Why is he here?" "Because I don't trust a single word that comes out of your mouth." I folded my arms, steadying myself. "Everything's in there. Your living arrangements for the next few weeks. The paperwork I already filed." His face twisted. "You already filed?" "Yes." He let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. So that's it? 12 years, and you're just done. I tilted my head. Weren't you? His lips pressed into a thin line. I saw the moment it hit him. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't begging him for an explanation or demanding answers. That's when his expression changed. You're being crazy right now, he snapped. This is insane. You don't even know what happened. I nodded. You're right. I don't. But you know what's funny? I don't care. His mouth opened, then closed. He wasn't expecting that. He thought I'd fight for him. But I wasn't interested in a man who had already made his choice. Then, just as I was about to tell him to get out, the front door swung open. And there, standing in the doorway, was Tara. She looked terrified. For a long second, none of us spoke. Then she whispered, Mike. I need to talk to you. His entire body went rigid. Tara, what the hell are you doing here? She swallowed. Her eyes flicked to me. I didn't know you were married, she stammered. I swear I didn't. I raised a hand. I don't care. She flinched. Mike turned to her, his voice low. You should go. But she shook her head. No, I need to tell you something. Something shifted in her expression. She wasn't just panicked. She was scared. Chris, my lawyer, sat up a little straighter, watching the scene unfold like it was some legal drama on TV. What is it? Mike asked, his voice tight. Tara hesitated, then looked straight at me. You don't know everything, she said softly. You think he cheated on you, but it's worse than that. The air in the room felt heavier. I stared at her. Worse how? She clenched her fists. I think he's been lying to both of us. Mike's face turned stone cold. Tara. His voice had an edge now, a warning. But she ignored him. And when she finally spoke, my stomach dropped. Tara took a deep breath, her hands trembling at her sides. She wouldn't look at Mike. I didn't just come here to apologize, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I came here because I'm scared. Mike tensed. Tara, stop. I looked between them, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I knew one thing. He did not want her to speak. Chris, my lawyer, set his papers down. Well, he said, leaning back, this just got interesting. Tara ignored Mike completely. She locked eyes with me. I think you should check your bank accounts. For a moment, I didn't move. What? I finally asked. She swallowed. The money. Your savings. Your accounts. Everything you have together. I think he's been moving it. Mike lunged toward her. Not to hit her, but to grab her arm, to pull her outside, to shut her up. But I was faster. I stepped between them. Sit. Down, I said, my voice low. Mike froze. I wasn't asking. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't begging. I was done. He slowly backed up, hands raised. It's not what you think. I turned to Tara. Explain. Now. Tara's eyes flicked to Mike once, but she must have seen the same thing I did. He had no control over the situation anymore. So she started talking. I thought he was separated, she said. That's what he told me. He said you guys were working through a divorce, that it was all amicable. She let out a bitter laugh. I actually felt bad for him. Thought he was this great guy stuck in a dead marriage. I didn't react. I didn't blink. I didn't care what she thought she knew. What does this have to do with our bank accounts? I asked. She hesitated. A few weeks ago, I saw something weird on his desk. A transfer receipt. Chris suddenly sat forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. What kind of transfer? Tara bit her lip. I didn't read all of it. I just saw numbers. A lot of them. He folded it up real fast, but I saw part of the name, something international. Chris cursed under his breath. I turned to him. What? He exhaled. I was going to ask if you wanted to freeze your joint accounts, but if he's been funneling money offshore, we might be too late. My stomach dropped. Mike pinched the bridge of his nose, like we were all just annoying him. This is ridiculous. I turned to him slowly. Where's the money? He scoffed. I don't know what she's talking about. Chris nodded like he expected that answer. Well, lucky for us, bank records do. He pulled out his phone. You want me to call the forensic accountant now or later? Mike's face flickered with something I had never seen before. Fear. And that's when it clicked. The late nights. The work trips. The arrogance in his voice when he told Tara I wouldn't leave him. He hadn't just been cheating. He'd been planning for me to stay. To trap me in a marriage where I wouldn't even see it coming when the money disappeared. You son of a bitch, I breathed. Mike's jaw clenched. It's not, I held up a hand. Shut up. He actually did. Chris was already on the phone, stepping into the other room. Tara looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. And Mike, he was watching me. Calculating. For the first time, I realized I had never really known the man I married. And I had no idea what he was capable of. The room was silent except for Chris speaking low into his phone, probably arranging whatever legal hellstorm was about to rain down on Mike. Tara stood stiffly by the door, her arms crossed, like she was afraid Mike might lunge at her again. And Mike was staring at me. I could see his mind racing, calculating, looking for an angle, a way out, an excuse that could smooth this over. I beat him to it. You were planning this. My voice was low, steady. That's why you said I wouldn't leave. His throat bobbed. Tara sucked in a sharp breath, like she hadn't even considered that. Oh my God, she whispered. That's why you kept telling me to just wait. You weren't leaving her, you were waiting for her money. I felt like I was going to be sick. Chris hung up the phone. We need to act fast, he said. If the money is offshore, it's going to be harder to track. He turned to me. Did you have access to all your joint accounts? Yes, I said automatically, then hesitated. I don't know. Chris exhaled. You'd be surprised how many people don't know until it's too late. Mike snapped. Enough. He slammed his hand against the counter, the sound echoing through the room. I did not steal anything. You're all acting like I, he stopped. Like he what? Like he didn't just get caught funneling money out of our accounts? Like he didn't just get exposed for planning to abandon me only when it was convenient for him? I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was hollow bitter. Say it, Mike. Finish the sentence. His fists clenched. I was looking out for myself. Tara flinched. I just nodded. And how was I supposed to look out for myself, Mike? I asked. Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you planning to wait until the accounts were empty? He hesitated. And that was my answer. Chris let out a slow breath. All right. That's enough for me. I'll be filing for an emergency freeze on all accounts tonight. Mike's head snapped toward him. You can't do that. Chris grinned. I can, and I will. Mike's eyes darkened. And that's when I realized how much danger I had been in this whole time. Not physical danger. No, Mike wasn't going to hit me. He wasn't going to throw me down the stairs or pull out a gun. That wasn't his style. His style was control. Slow, silent, meticulous. And I had just taken it away. Tara took a shaky step back. I should go. Good idea, I muttered. She hesitated. Then she met my eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was stupid. I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to tell her I forgave her. Maybe I never would be. She turned and walked out. Mike exhaled sharply. Look, no. He flinched at how fast I cut him off. I stepped forward until I was close enough to smell his aftershave. The same one I had bought him for Christmas. The same one he had probably worn while sneaking around with her. You're going to leave, I said. And you're going to stay gone. His nostrils flared. You don't get to make that decision. I smiled. Watch me. And then I opened the door. Chris stood up, already pulling out more paperwork. I'd suggest you grab your bags before we make this even worse for you. Mike's whole body tensed. He looked at the suitcases. Then at me. Then at Chris. And he knew. He had lost. Without another word, he grabbed his bags and walked out. The door slammed behind him. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Chris sighed. That went well. I gave him a look. Okay, fine, he said. It was a disaster. But at least now, you know who you were really married to. I let that sink in. Because he was right. I had spent 12 years believing I knew this man. Believing we had a good marriage, that he was someone I could trust. And it was all a lie. Chris started packing up his things. I'll call you tomorrow with updates. For now, try to get some rest. I nodded, even though I knew there was no way in hell I was sleeping tonight. When he left, I stood there alone in the silent house. The kids were at my mother's for the weekend. The dog was curled up on the rug, oblivious. And for the first time in 12 years, I was free. Not happy. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But free.